All right. Yes, we are in effect. Thanks, everyone. Sorry again for the delay. We are definitely going to get started. Now, welcome to my talk, DevOps or Die. Dun, 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 dun. Come on now. It's 8:30 in the morning. Yeah, I have to start off with some dramatics, right? All right, who am I? My name is Greenlee. I'm a certified Jedi Knight, studied on Dagobah system circa 1991. I'm also the founder of Blacks in Technology. We're an organization that focuses on increasing the participation and representation of Black women and men in tech. I'm born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm a mentor for Per Scholas, which is an organization that trains people to become entry-level computer technicians, Linux enthusiasts, comic book fan and collector, and I'm also a husband and father of 3, but you only see 2 in that picture. All right, so our agenda for today, what is DevOps? Well, show of hands, how many systems operations people do we have in here? Anybody? Yeah, okay, represent. And the rest of everyone else, developers? Project managers? Product, okay, great. We got a good mix of people then. So we're going to talk about what is DevOps, why DevOps, how do you do DevOps, in quotation marks, of course, and what does DevOps mean to my career? All right, top 1 answer on the board. Name something that DevOps is. This is a question that comes up quite a bit. People have their own definitions, but some people kind of misrepresent what DevOps is. So some people think that it means a job title, which it can, but it would be wrong because although the job title can get you money, it's not necessarily a job title. Some people assume that it's automation, and they would be wrong again. It's not automation. It encompasses automation, but it's not exactly automation. And then some people think that DevOps is just the tooling, and they would be wrong. It encompasses the tooling, but it's not exactly the tooling. So my definition, and just from what I gathered and been a practitioner for a few years, DevOps is development and operations working together to achieve business objectives. Now you'll hear some iterations on this. But basically, that's kind of what it is. So people want to know, like, what is business objectives? What does that mean? It means making money. Businesses are in business to make money. So businesses, that's what they do. They put out products, they put out services, and the ultimate goal is to see a return and make some money on that. So why DevOps? Why do we need DevOps in today's web scale, cloud world? First, let's talk a little bit about the software development lifecycle. Is anyone familiar with this? I'm pretty sure a lot of people are, yes? So phase 1 and 2, planning and analysis. This is where, what are we building and why? What are the requirements? Design and implementation is more along the lines of writing the code. Testing and integration is testing the code, unit tests, integration tests, and then you have ongoing maintenance, right? And traditionally, this has been done in a silo. You had development over here, you had operations over here, development writes the code, throws it over to operations, and operations implements it, everything blows up, dev says it's your problem, operations says no, it's your code, and then we get to this, all right? It worked fine in dev, it's ops problem now. And so DevOps is helping to get rid of this problem, right? To where we're pointing fingers at each other saying, hey, worked fine in dev, worked fine on my system, it's your problem now. So it's kind of this new way of thinking, this new way of thinking about culture, new way of thinking about your infrastructure, about deploying code to your infrastructure. And then we start thinking about treating our infrastructure like cattle, not pets. I'm pretty sure some people have heard that term before, where you don't coddle your infrastructure, you don't name it, this server is Big Joe or whatever. It's just a server, and you can just rebuild it. if you're thinking of it more like cattle. We also talk about how to get new features into code quicker. So it's this new way of thinking. And we have to think differently about scale now, right? Because we're no longer in the data center. Well, some of us still are. I shouldn't say that. Some of us still are in the data center. We're still doing this. We're still replacing the hard drives with bigger hard drives. We're popping open the top and throwing more RAM in there. And sometimes if we get crazy, we'll replace the CPU, right? But when you deal with cloud scale infrastructure, you have this instead. How are you going to deal with this in the traditional sense, especially when you only have 1 or 2 people on staff as your operations? You can't. So you need DevOps in order to be able to easily manage things at this scale. Because before DevOps, this is the face we're making, looking at our infrastructure. Like, how in the hell am I going to, there's no way. And so we have to start getting away from this and start dealing with scale in the appropriate manner. And we do that through automation. Now we're automating things. Now we can manage scale a lot better, a lot more efficiently. And we adopt these DevOps methodologies, which is taken from some of the tenets of agile software development, right, and practices, so we can take advantage of these tools to create and scale our infrastructure. So how many of you have read State of DevOps report that's put out by Puppet? Yeah, it's a great report. A lot of research goes into it, and Puppet has been putting out this for the last few years. And it basically what it boils down to is it talks about how high-performing companies operate and how they use DevOps to operate at that high scale, right? 3 times fewer failures in production, 24 times faster mean time to resolution, meaning that if there's an issue, if the house is burning down, then they're able to resolve that issue 24 times faster than a company that's not implementing DevOps methodologies and practices. More agile, 200 times more frequent deployments. Now, everyone's not going to be a net scale. They're not going to have 200 deployments per second, right? And so you tailor DevOps methodologies to fit your needs. But companies that implement it, if you're that high performing, you can get up to that number. They're more successful, 2 times more likely to exceed market expectations, 50% higher market cap growth over 3 years, whatever all that stuff means. But what it's basically saying is they're able to innovate faster, a lot quicker. They're able to put out new features. Yet DevOps adoption is only 2% worldwide, meaning that there's still room, right, for systems engineers and development to work together in companies to achieve DevOps. So how do you do DevOps? Well, you don't actually do DevOps, right? That's kind of a misnomer. You don't do DevOps. It's a methodology and practice that you implement. But the first thing that I'll suggest is to read these 2 books. Start off with these 2 books. One, The Phoenix Project, and the other, DevOps Handbook. The Phoenix Project is more of a novel, and it talks about a company's struggle with their DevOps journey, or their journey to DevOps. Let's put it like that. So it's a real practical story that talks about a manufacturing company, and it talks about their journey to getting towards DevOps. And the DevOps Handbook is a more applicable, more practical, step-by-step book on how you achieve and create, like it says, how to create world-class agility, reliability, security, and technology organizations. Both of them really good books. So in order to talk about DevOps, I think we need to talk about the tenets of DevOps and kind of what it's built on, which is CAMS. Culture, automation, measure, and share. Culture, having empathy, right? Towards if you're in operations, you have empathy towards your development team, right? If you're a development, you have empathy towards your operations, because you both need to be on the same page in order to achieve some type of velocity, in order to make sure that your application or your website or whatever is resilient. And without each other, you can't make that happen. And you'll always revert back to it's your problem. So we try to have this blameless culture. When things go wrong, you talk about the solution and not talk about, who caused the problem. And this is a learning moment. When things go wrong, you find out what happened, you resolve it, you document it, hopefully, and you learn from it. And then automation. Automate everything you can that's possible. It's when you're thinking about your infrastructure at scale, there's no way to manage all that without automation, and then you start building infrastructure as code. You start having your CI/CD, your pipelines automated as well, your testing, your unit testing and integration automated. All these things are wrapped up into automation. And then you measure this, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about measuring things and some of the ways in which you can start measuring. And sharing, obviously, sharing your knowledge. Ops being involved in sprints, collaboration, documentation, having brown bag sessions so that you can teach new technology and new skills to your team members. And I think it's imperative that we talk about also the 3 ways. Anyone know the 3 ways or ever heard of the 3 ways? No one? Okay. Excellent. It gives me an opportunity to talk about it. So the 3 ways is the first principle is flow, right? It says we need to accelerate the work from development to operations and then to our customers. And then we need to find out what our work is. What work is in progress? What work do we have in progress? So we need to find ways to visualize this work. And because if we can't see work, then we don't know what work needs to be done, and we can't have this workflow from dev to ops. Oh, sorry about that. And then the second of the 3 ways is the feedback loop, right? Let me get my mouse back over here. And this is more about the constant flow of feedback from right to left and the stages of our value stream. So we need to find out what our value stream is in our business, and then we need to find out how do we get more feedback around that loop. And that can be through testing, right? You deploy code or you do testing on your code, you find bugs. That's the feedback loop, right? And it allows you to fix those bugs and everything before you actually deploy it out. And the big part of this is not to have bugs implemented downstream. You want to make sure that you get feedback instantly and that you're able to mitigate that and resolve any type of bugs or anything necessary. And then the third way enables the creation of high trust culture. So experimentation, learning from each other, taking a scientific approach, risk taking. I think one of the key things is, especially at my job as a DevOps engineer, is our team, the way that we kind of do things is, hey, do you think this will work? Well, I don't know, try it out, right? Especially if you have a dev environment, you might as well try it out, see what happens. If there's any issues, you fix them. That's another feedback loop. You experiment, you risk take, you facilitate the creation of organizational learning, and you put that back into that feedback loop. So now you constantly have this loop going from dev to ops and back around. Over here. So eventually, this is kind of what you want, right? You want dev and ops on the same page. You want dev doing the planning, the code, the building, the testing. Ops helping with the releasing, the deployment, the operation, and the monitoring. And you want this constant feedback loop. And you want dev and ops to be in on this so that they know when things are not going well in your environment. And we're no longer separated. We're not in silos anymore. We're working together. So one of the things that, one of the questions that people ask is, okay, so how do we get there? What do we do? And I always like to say, tackle the low-hanging fruit first. Go after things that's easy to implement in your environment. Get a few team members that have the same mindset towards automation and towards building this DevOps culture. So you can do simple things like, what your SSH keys. You can automate the deployment of your SSH keys. Or you can do something simple. I know at my last job, we had an issue where one of our database engineers needed logs out of a server. We didn't have a centralized logging server at the time. So I spun up Rundeck and created this ad hoc job to just tail logs from whatever log file that they needed. That's something that's a quick win, right? And then you can show that to others, and then they can say, oh, okay, this is useful. And then you can go from there. But tackle the low-hanging fruit, because what you don't want to do, and something that actually happened at that same job, was, I'm coming in fresh, and I'm talking all this DevOps madness, right? And my manager is like, oh, okay, we have this application that's one of our highest revenue grossing applications out there. We should DevOps that. No. I don't think that's, you definitely don't want to take, your highest grossing revenue application and try to throw DevOps on top of that first. You start small. Get those small wins, those small successes, let everyone else see what can be done when you use DevOps practices and methodologies, and then you go from there. And then you start asking yourself questions like, how long, right? That's relativity. Anyone a fan of Interstellar? Yeah. Romley was always the one that was, he always had that practical advice, and he always had that, that's relativity, folks. But when we're talking about how long, this is a good way to kind of measure things, right? How long does it take SSH keys to be distributed? Do you have to log into every single server in order to copy SSH keys? How long does that take? Does it take 1 hour to do every server in your environment? Use that as a metric. And then once you bring in automation, then you can compare that to what used to, the amount of time that it used to take. And then you can say, okay, I'll cut that time by 50%. Or how long does it take for an idea to become a product? That's your lead time. Use that. If it took 2 months before and all of a sudden you bring in some automation and it took 1 week or a month, you've cut your time. How long does it take to roll out a new environment? These are some of the questions that you can ask yourself. How long does it take to rebuild a server, get logs, resolve an issue, install a package, update your servers, right? So you can use all of these. You can use the question, how long, to get measurements for your environment so that you can, when you bring in whatever, a tool, in my case it was Rundeck, but it can be Puppet, it can be Ansible. You can say, hey, when we did it like this, it took 3 hours. Now that we're doing it like this, it takes 1 hour, and you cut your time down by 66%. Find out what your bottlenecks are, right? Is your bottleneck environment creation? Could be. It could be a people resource thing. Maybe only one person has all the knowledge. That's where documentation and sharing comes in. How many people have had problems with onboarding? You come into a company, yeah, that's a huge problem. You come into a company and they want to onboard you and there's no documentation. You have to learn and question everything in order to find out how the environment works. So maybe documentation helps. That's a bottleneck because it takes time for you to get up, more time for you to get up and running than if you had the documentation area that you can go through. So find out what your bottlenecks are because that can be huge. And then gain some insight as to kind of what your applications are doing, but more so, find out what it is that your business does, right? Take the salesperson out for lunch. Talk to the product owner. Talk to the project manager. Find out what brings value to your business. And that way you can then find out how you're valuable to the company and the things that you can do to increase value. And then daily stand-ups. This is a huge one for me. I came from a strictly operations background, and I went into a SaaS company, and we started doing these stand-ups. But it helped. How many operations people in here are in their Scrum stand-ups? It helps. because you then are able to find out what it is development wants, what it is that they need. If you don't know, you're going to go back to that same the slide before where it's like everything is burning down, because you need to know what the dependencies are. You need to be able to make recommendations if development, for instance, says something crazy and you're like, oh, that's not going to work. You need to do it like this. So to me, it's very important that operations is involved in daily stand-ups and scrum meetings and things like that. Oh, everyone say, oh, and ops and dev, they can love each other and hug each other, right? Because that's what we want. You know, at the end of the day, we want ops and the development working together to achieve business objectives. Now what? Now where do you go from here? Code out of all your infrastructure, right? Infrastructure is code, it's huge. This is what is needed, because now we're dealing with, API endpoints. We're dealing with containers. We're dealing with the cloud now. We're dealing with virtual machines. So now we have to deal with things in a programmatic way. We're no longer doing things manually. I know there's still a lot of companies that are logging into servers. Sometimes it's root, boo, right? And so we have to start thinking differently. We need to start thinking of our infrastructure as code, and we need to code it that way. So some of the things that help me out is learning some of the tools that help you to do this, right? Configuration management. How many people are using this in their environment right now? Just a few? Configuration management is gold. Being able to programmatically tell your servers what to look like, stand back, push a button, and let it happen. This is what you want, because then you can deal with scale a lot easier. You got Ansible, you got Chef, Puppet. Cloud provisioning and management. These are some more tools that are used every day within DevOps. A big one now is Kubernetes and Docker. Terraform to build out your infrastructure, right? If you're not using these tools, there's ways that you can experiment. Most of these tools are open source, and they have free versions. So you can experiment on your laptop. You can use tools like Vagrant to spin up, instances of operating systems and use Terraform in that manner. But learn some of these tools, because these tools is what's going to help you achieve DevOps, right? Version control. Now that you have all your infrastructure in code, now you can version control it. And these are just some of the version control platforms that are out there. I'm pretty sure everyone here is probably using one of them. Cloud platforms, of course. We got the big players, Amazon, Azure, Google Cloud Platform. Scripting languages, we're still doing scripting. Just because we're doing Terraform and Ansible doesn't mean that scripting is gone anywhere. Scripting is more prevalent now than it ever has been. And then job automation, build automation testing. We're using things nowadays like Rundeck. We're using Jenkins. We're using, I don't know if anyone has used Fabric, but I've used Fabric a few times as well. But we're using these tools now to automate our build process, to implement that into our CI/CD pipeline, right? And then collaboration, documentation, and communication. This all goes back to sharing. And hopefully, most people here are probably using a version of this. I don't know if HipChat is still around anymore. I think isn't it Slack now? I think so. But Slack, Teams. So now we come around to you. What does this mean to you as developers, to you as operations people? It means that you gain a very particular set of skills, right? Now you can work with web scale applications. Now you have more value. And now you can bring these skills to the table to your organization and show them the way, the DevOps way, right? Because now your value increases, you're providing value to your org, and now you can concentrate on high value tasks. Now you don't have to worry about the firefighting and the mundane things like getting logs for a database administrator, and you can really start focusing on things that matter in your organization, like making your system self-healing, making your environment more resilient. These are things that provide value back to your company because their websites always need to be up, and if they're down, maybe they need to self-heal. Or you can provide value by watching King of Kong all day on repeat. No? No King of Kong people here? Oh, come on. I searched and searched for this. And also, at the end of the day, you can say, show me the money, because now you have more value out in the marketplace as well. I don't know what the average DevOps engineer is making, but it's pretty high. And I know that a lot of developers are switching over to becoming DevOps engineers because they have the development chops and picking up the operations chops and putting that together. We've had quite a few people on my team do that, and it increases your value overall. All right, some resources. DevOps Handbook, Phoenix Project are two that I already mentioned, but Site Reliability Engineering is a really good one. Training sites, A Cloud Guru, Linux Academy, Udemy, Coursera. I'm pretty sure some of